Well, we've now moved on to Unit 5, and we're starting out Lesson 1. Our first problem says it was 5 degrees Celsius in Copenhagen. It was negative 5 degrees Celsius in Copenhagen and negative 12 degrees Celsius in Oslo. Which city was colder? Now, it's entirely possible that the answer here is very obvious to you, but let's just make sure that we understand. We sketch ourselves a number line, and both of my numbers are negative, so I feel safe putting my 0 over here. And then I like to, put these numbers on my number line. So negative 5, I'm going to put right here, and negative 12 would be right here. So hopefully you already knew, but if you didn't, you would look at negative 12 and negative 5 and know the number that's further to the left is smaller, so the city that was colder is Oslo. Okay, so we have a fish that's 12 meters below the surface of the ocean. What is its elevation? Okay, so we should start off by deciding this is the ocean level. And we know that our ocean is always at 0 feet. And a fish is 12 meters below the surface of the ocean, so that means it would go down 12 meters. And if it's going down, the place that it gets to would be negative 12. So the answer here is negative 12 meters. The next one, a seabird. Oh, I'm so glad I didn't say seagull. You know how I feel about those. They're gross. Anyway, a seabird is 28 meters above the surface of the ocean. What is its elevation? So above means it's going up 28 meters. So therefore, it ends at positive 28. So we're dealing with our positive and negative numbers, so it really is important that you identify it right now. Although, obviously, without the plus sign there, we would know that it's still positive. Now, this says that the bird is directly above the fish, which is how we drew it. So, therefore, how far apart are they? So, we're looking at this distance from up here to down here. So, the way that I would do that is to say, okay, 28 up here and 12 down here. Well, I would have to add those together to find their distance. 20 plus 10 is 30. 8 plus 2 is 10. So the answer would be 40 feet apart. Next, we have to compare each of these numbers that are given using the greater than, equal to, or less than symbols. Okay, and again, these should be fairly obvious, but just in case they're not, we're going to put these on number lines just to make it that much clearer for us. So I've got 3 and negative 3. So if I set this as 0, I would have negative 3 here and positive 3 here. So therefore, the one that's further to the left is always smaller than the one to the right, so therefore this is less than. Next one, I've got 12 and 24. They're both positive. I'm going to throw my 0 down here, and this would be 12 and then 24. So again, I always know that my symbol tells me that the number to the left on the number line is the smaller one. So again, 12 is less than 24. Next, I've got negative 12 and negative 24. They're both negative. I'm going to put my 0 over here. So as I count in this direction, if I go negative 1, negative 2, etc., I would certainly get to negative 12 before I finally get to negative 24. So if I carry on with this, I know it's less than, the 24 is less than my negative 12. Negative 24 is less than negative 12. However, I can't just put it in there like I did the others because you notice that the negative 24 is to the right. So I still want to point at it. So this tells me that negative 12 is greater than negative 24, which is also indicated on my number line. Okay, next, I've got 5 and negative 5. 5 and negative 5. Well, I'm going to put a 0 in the middle. I'm going to start out putting my 5 here. And negative 5. Well, if I think about my negatives as the opposite, each time I see a negative sign, each one of those tells me the opposite. So the opposite of negative 5 is going to be positive 5. So they're actually going to be on the same place. So these two are equal to each other. And my last one, I've got 7.2 and 7. They're both positive. I'm going to put my 0 here. I've got whole numbers. I would say 7 is somewhere here. And then 7.2 or 7 and 2/10 is going to be going up. That would be 7.2. So if I continue to apply what I've been doing, 7 is smaller than 7.2 or less than, but my 7.2 is listed first here, so I am going to say that 7.2 is greater than or larger than 7. Next, now I've got negative 7.2 and negative 7. So this time they are both negative. I'm going to put my 0 here. And just like when we did the previous one, we knew that 7, as I was counting, came first before 7.2. It's going to happen the same thing when we go in this direction. I would most certainly hit negative 7 before I would hit negative 7.2. So if I put my, I'm running out of, don't have too much room there, but this time I know that negative 7.2 is smaller than negative 7 because it's further to the left on my number line. So there we go. Next, I've got negative 1.5 and negative 3 3/2. Okay, so I'm going to put my 0 here because, well, I don't even know why I did that, to be honest. I think because I'm looking forward I did that. So I did that, I put the 0 in the middle, and now I've got negative 1.5. So if I said this was a half, and this is negative 1, and this is negative 2, this spot right here would be negative 1.5. Now 3/2, I've got decimals here, but if I looked at this by halves, I've got a half, that's 1/2, that's 2/2, here we are right here, 3/2, negative 3/2. So again, these are the same, so these two are equal to each other. Negative 4/5 and negative 5/4. Well, I'm going to make my number line. They're both negative. I'm going to put my 0 over here. Negative 4/5 and negative 5/4. Well, this one is bigger than 1. If I'm thinking about that in a positive, if it was positive, right? And this one would be less than, again, if I was working with positive numbers. So that means if I was going to put my negative 4/5, I'd have to count by fifths, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5, that would give me 1, really negative 1, because remember I'm going to the left, and negative 4/5 would be right here. And then negative 5/4 is going to have to be beyond the 1. We'll just guesstimate that it's right about there because it's larger than 1. So if I bring in my handy dandy alligator mouth, I can see that negative 5/4 is smaller than negative 4/5. So that means when I look at it over here, the bigger one is the negative 4/5. Okay, next. I'm going to take a look at this, negative 3/5. I know in general when I compare numbers, if I give them the same denominator or number on the bottom, that they're easier to compare. And I know that 5 very easily goes into 10. So if I had negative 3 over 5, and I used a proportion to say I wanted that to go to 10, well, 5 is simply doubled. If I doubled 3, well, really negative 3, that could be negative 6. And you should notice that these are the same. So therefore, my answer here is equal. And the next one, I've got negative 2/3 and positive 1/3. Well, when I've got a negative and a positive, it becomes pretty obvious. But again, I'm going to write it here for us. Oops. So when I look at this, I can very easily see that negative 2/3 is to the left of 1/3. So I know that 1/3 is larger. And when I come over here, I've got my less than sign.